Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm glad you all took me seriously when I said that we wanted you to connect. So it's great to see that you all are mingling. To keep us on track, we're going to go ahead and get started. So up next, we have a very special presentation with our colleague here from IES. So we have Dr. Helen Kim with us, and she is a program officer for the English Learners Research Portfolio at the National Center for Education Research Institute for Education Sciences, or IES. She also serves as a program officer for 2 national R&D centers focused on English learners in secondary school settings. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kim.
Hi, good morning. My name is Helen Kim, and unfortunately, I was supposed to be presenting with my colleague, Dr. Ed Metz. He wasn't able to make it today, so I will try to cover his part as well. But you'll see me towards the end, kind of maybe bumbling around because that's the part that wasn't mine. But anyways, I'll try to do diligence and give you his contact information. But anyways, I'm a program officer at the National Center for Education Research, or NCER, at the Institute of Education Sciences, or IES. And, I want to thank Awela for inviting us here and giving us the opportunity today to share some of the English learner related studies that we are funding through our research center. So I'll start with a quick overview of IES and NCER in case you are not familiar with the Institute. And then I'll discuss the English learner portfolio that I oversee at NCER. And then we'll go into discussing about the Small Business Innovation Research Program, or SBIR, and provide some examples of English learner related projects that have been funded through that program. And then I'll leave some room at the end for any questions you might have. So the goal today is to just give you a very quick snapshot of the center and a brief overview of the English learner research agenda at NCER. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go into any great details, but I do hope that you get a sense of the important work that is going on, that our researchers are doing in this area, and provide you with some resources in case you want to learn more. So IES is the independent research, evaluation, and statistics arm of the U.S. Department of Ed. We are nonpartisan by law, so we're not involved in any of the policy-making process. Instead, we're charged with providing rigorous and relevant research to inform education, practice, and policy. We're also charged with sharing this information broadly. We want to disseminate what works, but we also want to understand what doesn't work and why, so that we can help to improve education outcomes for all students, particularly those who are at risk of failure. So this graphic represents the organizational structure of IES. We are led by our director, currently Dr. Mark Schneider, who is advised by the National Board for Education Sciences. Our Standards and Review Office, or the Office of Science, oversees the scientific peer review processes for IES grant applications and IES reports. IES also has 4 centers that you'll see at the bottom, and you'll notice that the Standards and Review Office, who do the grant review process, is removed from these 4 centers, and that's for specific reasons to separate the centers and the grant applications that are coming through our centers entirely from the peer review process. So the National Center for Education Statistics is the primary federal entity for collecting and analyzing data related to education. The National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance conducts unbiased, large-scale evaluations of education programs supported by federal funds. They also provide technical assistance and supports the development and use of research and evaluation. The next two centers are the National Center for Education Research and the National Center for Special Education Research, or NPD. And these two centers award the research grants. So NCER supports rigorous research that addresses the nation's most pressing education needs from early childhood through adult education. And NCER sponsors a rigorous and comprehensive program of special education research designed to expand the knowledge and understanding of infants, toddlers, and students with or at risk of disabilities from birth through high school. And today I'll focus primarily on NCER and the body of work that we fund through them. So there are 5 main objectives of the research grant programs. So we want to develop or identify education interventions such as practices, strategies, curricula, policies, and approaches that enhance education outcomes, again, and that can be widely implemented. We also, as I mentioned before, want to identify what does not work and thereby encourage innovation and further research. We want to understand the processes that underlie the effectiveness of education interventions. So not just did it work, but why did it work? And the variation in their effectiveness. So did it work for everyone or just a subgroup? And if so, what are the conditions and the context that it worked in? We want to develop measures of academic achievement and learning. And finally, we want to support research and national leadership on core and relevant issues. So program officers at NCER play a critical role in meeting these objectives of the grant programs. So the overarching role of the program officer is to help develop strong portfolios of research at IES. We want to attract and support high quality education research and ensure that the investment of public dollars in education research has good outcomes. We are ultimately stewards of taxpayer dollars. And so what do we do to help achieve these objectives? Well, we work closely with applicants to develop strong proposals, and this can range from discussing an idea from the beginning through reading a full draft of the proposal before the deadline. With current grantees, we communicate regularly, as I'm sure all of you do as well, with your program officers to ensure that the project goals are being met and to help troubleshoot if any problems arise. We provide technical assistance in a variety of areas and make sure that the projects are progressing. We also have a particular focus on capacity building. We want to ensure that our applicants have the skills necessary to conduct the type of work that IES funds. So we monitor the training needs in the field to see if there are ways that we can support that capacity building. And finally, we also think critically about dissemination and ways that we can support our grantees in disseminating the great work that they're doing. So before I delve into the English learner portfolio, I want to give a general overview of the awards and funding by competition that's happening at the NCER, the center level. And this is the numbers for this past fiscal year, 2021. The number of grant competitions that we have varies each year, but this past year, we held 8 standalone competition. And you'll notice that listed at the bottom here, as well as SBIR at the end. And across these competitions, we made 140 awards and invested almost $240 million. The English learner portfolio in particular falls under the first category, the highest bar, the first one, under education research. However, I do want to mention that in 2020, so it's not on this chart, but we funded 2 R&D centers. So the third category here focused specifically on English learners in secondary school settings. So I won't go into great detail about English learners given the audience here. However, I will mention that IES uses the term English learner under a broad definition to include students whose home language is not English and whose English language proficiency hinders their ability to meet learning and achievement expectations for their level of schooling. I recognize there's lots of different terms that are being used. What we want to do as program officers is use the terms that our grantees are using specific to their project. IES actually started in 2002, but the English learners topic area began in 2010 to draw more attention to the unique strengths and needs of English learners in particular. IES supports research on English learners to better understand the strategies and practices and assessments that support the academic success of these students. We also want to make sure that we are providing equitable educational experiences for English learners. So this is a similar chart to the one you just saw. However, what I'm doing here is showing you just the English learner portfolio. So within the education research competition grant program, there are 11 topic areas that we cover, and English learner is just one of those topic areas. So I've just kind of whittled this down all the way down to just the English learner portfolio. And I'm showing you from 2010 to 2021, the span of the portfolio. So over those 12 years, we funded 49 research grants. And then in addition, as I mentioned before, in 2010, you'll notice the light blue bar, which are the 2 R&D centers that were awarded. In 2019, there's just one, a short bar there, but one grant that was funded under the special topic of teaching and learning non-English languages. So it didn't come under the typical English learner topic area. There was a special topic that was competed during that year. So as you can see here, the award funds vary considerably across the years, but between 2010 and 2021, collectively, we've invested almost $106 million. 20 million of that went to the R&D centers, 86 million, or about 80%, went to the 49 grant awards. So what I want to do here is actually focus just on the current English learner projects that are ongoing. These have been funded starting in 2015 all the way through 2021. And the reason that I want to look at these projects, and there's 21 of them and 2 R&D centers in here, is because I want to share the general characteristics of the types of projects that we're funding, the kinds of research that's going on right now, but also I want to highlight some gaps in our portfolio in an effort to, think about ways that we can expand upon the current portfolio, and so that we can make it, more well-rounded and more relevant for the people who need it. So I'll share 3 main characteristics so far. So this first chart, and I apologize, it's hard to see, but I think you'll have access to these slides, shows which grade levels are being targeted by our projects. So you'll notice grades pre-K through 12 up at the very top. Each row is a project here, and you can disregard sort of the color, which doesn't really show up very well here. But so for example, the first project is looking at grades pre-K through 3rd grade. The second project is focusing on 2nd and 3rd graders, and so forth and so on. So at first glance, there's a large range of grade levels that are being targeted by our projects that span pre-K through 12th grade. You'll notice 2 projects that kind of cut across all the grades, and these are actually meta-analyses that are looking at reclassification policies across the US, as well as effective interventions for English learners, again, a meta-analysis. But aside from those 2 projects, you'll notice that majority of our funded projects are focusing on elementary grades. And we thought that, that's pretty problematic because English learners are not just in elementary schools. So that's why we made that extra effort in 2020 to invest substantially in those 2 R&D centers, and they are tasked with only focusing on English learners in secondary school settings. And I'll talk more about them in just a little bit. So we want to continue making sure that we are reaching, that we are supporting more projects that are reaching more grades. I apologize, this map is very small, but what you'll notice are just the spots of color, I guess, throughout the states. This chart shows where our research is taking place. So as you can see from this figure, it's only just a handful. And in fact, across from 2010 to present, there's the research has only taken place in 14 states. And the majority of the projects focus on 3 states, California, Texas, and New York. Of course, this is not surprising given the number of English learners that are in these 3 states, but as we are all aware, the demographics are changing and more English learners are moving to new and different areas. These increases are becoming more widely distributed across the nation, with substantial growth happening in new destination states or areas that were not traditionally considered to be points of immigrant entry. Given these changes and that are happening and will most likely continue to happen in the future, there's a real need to expand future IES funded projects to ensure that we better capture and support all students who are identified as English learners in the US. The final chart I want to show you, again, I apologize, it's small. What you want to focus here is not the colors, but actually the height of the bars, but it shows you the different topic or focus areas of the projects. Majority of the projects, of course, focus on English language development, given the portfolio that I'm talking about. They also focus on academic subjects like math, science, social studies, and English language arts, social emotional development, teacher professional development, and policy and system level issues such as reclassification policies. But when you're taking a real look at this, you'll notice there's like 2 projects that focus on policy and systems, or 4 projects out of the 49 that focus on math. And so we do want to continue expanding upon the variety of research areas that are being studied through our grant projects. Okay. Finally, I'd like to describe the various project types that we fund in our portfolio. So there are 4 different project types that we fund under the Education Research Grant programs. And so these types include measurement, exploration, development and innovation, and efficacy and replication. And on this slide, what I want to show is that the English learner projects that were funded are relatively evenly distributed across these project types, although there are fewer measurement projects and more development and innovation projects overall. In the next couple of slides, I'll describe each project type and provide an example so you have a better sense of the kinds of projects that fall under these project types. Okay, so the first project type is the measurement grant. And this project supports the development and validation of new or modified instruments or assessments for use by educators or education researchers or other education stakeholders. One example of an ongoing measurement project is one headed by Dr. Nicole Russo-Poncerin at Rush University Medical Center, and this was funded in 2020. And this project is looking to validate a Spanish language version of the VESIP, or the Virtual Environment for Social Information Processing, which is a web-based social information processing tool for youth in grades 3 through 7 who are Spanish-speaking English learner students. And rather than me describing this project, there's a short 90-second clip that I'll play for you.
Buenos días, soy la doctora Piedad Kay, directora del programa bilingüe en Manheim, Distrito 83, en Franklin Park, Illinois. Me da un gran gusto presentar este video del ambiente virtual para procesar información social, edición en español, por el Centro Médico de la Universidad Rush.
VISEP Español es una evaluación de proceso de información social basado en la web para niños de tercer a quinto grado. Basada en el modelo teórico de Cricky Dodge, VISEP mide cómo los niños razonan en 10 situaciones sociales complejos como provocación y compromiso durante interacciones virtuales en un ambiente escolar. Los jóvenes comienzan con personalizando un avatar y después serán dirigidos por tutoriales automatizados. Durante el programa contestarán preguntas que miden identificación de problemas, preferencias de objetivos y soluciones, respuestas emocionales, autoeficacia social y atribución de intención. La evaluación se puede completar independientemente. El tablero de control permite una experiencia eficiente para manualmente agregar jóvenes o subir una lista de grupos, iniciar la evaluación y generar reportes de resultados, incluyendo competencias individuales y resultado total del procesamiento de información social. Los datos pueden ser vistos de nivel estudiantil al nivel del distrito. Las habilidades de procesamiento de información social son importantes para el desarrollo de relaciones positivas con sus compañeros, el bienestar emocional y participación productiva en sus escuelas y comunidades. La evaluación VISEP en español proviene de un método único para educadores, clínicos e investigadores.
All right. So as you can see, this is one of the types of measures that are being
Searching for a better way to collaborate with your team? Try Miro, an online whiteboard made for teamwork. Everyone's welcome, from project managers to product managers, designers, developers, agile coaches, and consultants. Get the whole team together in real time on Miro's infinite canvas. Use your Miro board however you like, for online workshops and project planning, or brainstorming and ideation sessions. There's a template tailor-made for your needs. Whether you're in the office, working with a fully remote global team, or catching up in your own time, working together is seamless. Miro is there whenever and wherever inspiration strikes to keep things moving. Interactive features help your team work as one, with timers, sticky notes, voting, and of course, these guys. And the finishing touch? You can integrate the tools you're already using, making your Miro board the center of the universe. Join the millions of teams already on Miro and connect and collaborate in a new way. Sign up for free today.
understand how and why such programs may support learning and achievement. So this was funded in 2018, and there was a bit of a pause due to COVID.
Quick question for you. What do bad breath and your poop have in common? And did you know that it's related to weight loss? Researchers estimate that over 80 million Americans suffer from chronic halitosis, or bad breath. At least 99% of everyone else has dragon breath in the morning. Each year, Americans spend over $10 billion on oral hygiene products like gums, mouthwashes, and toothpaste to combat chronic bad breath. These products only mask and cover up the problem. 9 out of 10 bad breath sufferers spend in excess of 72 hours and over $400 a year just battling their condition and see barely any results. That's because they're merely putting a Band-Aid on the problem. You see, bad breath is not a mouth problem, it's a gut problem. Every minute of every day, 100 trillion bacteria in your gut, both good and bad, are releasing gaseous byproducts. And if your gut bacteria is out of balance, it's going to stink. This excess bacterial gas is released one of two ways, through your mouth or your intestinal tract. So if you're dealing with chronic or even occasional bad breath, and especially if you also have issues being backed up on the other end, then it might be time for a flush of your bad gut bacteria. That's why I recommend you use Zupu, the natural gut cleanse supplement trusted by 246,645 men and women around the world to cleanse their gut, and by doing so, transform their daily life by dropping extra weight, clearing out the bad bacteria in their gut, and overcoming nagging problems like chronic bad breath. And bad breath is embarrassing. It really stinks. Get rid of the problem at its roots. Carrying around pounds of excess toxic poop in your intestines also stinks. Flush it out fast. Having constant digestion and GI problems stinks as well. Hit the reset button on your gut. Clean out all that bad bacteria with Zupu. All it takes is a simple 15-day cleanse. Just take 2 capsules of Zupu before bed with plenty of water, and within a day or two, you're going to be flushing all that waste out in a big way. Click through to read all the incredible reviews on the next page about how effective Zupu truly is. One customer wrote in recently calling Zupu her new best friend. Give Zupu a try for a 15-day cleanse, and you'll see why everyone is raving about how much better you feel.
Students who speak mostly English at home. Students who speak mostly Spanish at home were highly engaged in two-way immersion classrooms regardless of the language model. But for students who speak mainly English at home, we're less engaged in 50-50 alternate approach. And this is the model where one day is taught in English, another day is taught in Spanish, back and forth by different teachers. And although these may be easier to implement, maybe logistically, the researchers suggest that using a 50-50 switch approach, and this is the model where every day, half the day is taught in English, half the day is taught in Spanish by different teachers, may be the best model if we want to maximize engagement for all students. So the third project type is the development and innovation project. And this project type supports the development and pilot testing of new or modified education interventions that are intended to produce beneficial impacts on learner outcomes. And one example of this project is led by Dr. Johanna Nikula at the Education Development Center. And her team are developing and testing an innovative instructional unit called Analyzing Diagrams as Support for English Learners. And through this project, they are developing and studying grade 6 fraction division lessons that incorporate various features such as diagrams and supports for language access and language production in collaboration with over 30 teachers to strengthen the learning experiences for emergent multilingual learners. And I've included links to all of these projects in the title. You'll notice it takes you to their abstract. There's also a link to the actual support materials for this, where they have contact information for the PI. It has learning materials. It actually provides the lesson plans and the guides for teachers for all of the developed materials through this project. Okay. The final project type that I want to talk about is the efficacy and replication. And this project type supports initial efficacy studies of education interventions predicted to have a meaningful effect on important education outcomes. So typically, the sort of order of research is that development innovation, you take sort of the theory that exists, develop an intervention, and through the development project, you're testing and showing some evidence of promise. And if there is evidence of project promise, you'll take it to this efficacy and replication project type where you'll test it on a larger scale. One example of this is a study conducted by Dr. Leslie Babinski at Duke University. And what she's doing is testing the efficacy of what's called a developing consultation and collaboration skills professional development program for improving teacher outcomes. And there's 3 main components of this program that includes collaboration between ESL and classroom teachers, implementation of high impact instruction strategies, and incorporation of students' cultural wealth into the classroom. And collectively, they're looking to improve students' language and literacy skills. And I want to play for you about 2 minutes of this clip because they do a really good job describing the program, but also you get to actually see this in action by some of the teachers that's participating in this program.
What we're going to do is we're going to read.
Because there's so many demands on teachers, we worked really hard with classroom and ESL teachers to make sure they really could incorporate this into their daily routine.
We have some different sentences we're going to say about each page.
There are 3 main goals for this project. First and foremost is to increase the collaboration and consultation of classroom and ESL teachers.
That instructional and curricular alignment can really benefit their English learners.
When we're meeting, we have a plan. This is what we're going to accomplish. These are the goals that we're going to set.
I've really learned how the conversations that I have with teachers can be much more productive and much more focused.
You know, part of it is that they have 2 teachers that are working as a team for them, and it's kind of a community that we've built.
The second goal of the program, of course, is to increase the language and literacy skills of Latino English learners. So we look to the research to see what strategies are most effective.
Oh no, some of the words are out of our
sentence frames, I'm gonna need your help to put them back.
What we're trying to do is really just enhance the things that teachers are already doing for the benefit of developing their English learners' language and their literacy skills.
This is not something new that I'm adding onto my plate. This goes right along with what I'm already doing, and it just enhances everything.
Let's all say that word.
Right. The two pieces combined, the collaboration piece and these really powerful strategies, has helped me to grow a lot as a teacher.
With the modified DRA lesson, my children are understanding the information that I'm trying to teach them on such a deeper level than they were before.
The third goal of our program is to help schools incorporate the cultural wealth that their Latino families are bringing.
We need to build on that linguistic knowledge that children bring in their first language in order to accelerate English language learning, which is what the research is showing us.
The cultural wealth that English language learners bring is their linguistic capital. All the different arts and crafts and music, things.
I think you'll have access to this video if you want to learn more. And at the end of the video, there's contact information for the PI in case you want to contact Dr. Babinski. Okay, so I'll give a brief sort of overview of the two R&D centers that are focusing on English learners in secondary school settings. As I mentioned before, these two centers are tasked with focusing solely on the unique needs and barriers that the students in secondary school settings are facing. Collectively and individually, the centers are creating innovative solutions, contributing to knowledge and theory, and providing reliable information about how to improve education opportunities and achievement for these English learners. Both of the centers are conducting two lines of research. So first, they have to identify and describe the policies and system level practices that are associated with secondary English learners' access to the general curriculum. Here, they're looking at what are the barriers that students face when they want to access the general curriculum, as well as malleable factors or things that we can do in order to help them access the general curriculum. The second line of work that they're doing is to identify approaches to improving secondary English learners' access to and ability to learn from instruction in general education courses. So as part of this work, both centers are developing curricula, different learning materials, teacher guides, and practices in the subject areas of math, science, social studies, and English language arts in order to provide higher quality learning opportunities for these students. I quickly want to, you have access to the two center websites, but I want to show you some of the really good resources that they have on this page. So this first center that's based in West Ed, you'll notice if you scroll down, there's briefs about the current work that's kind of coming out. This one's around comprehensive system of assessments. There's a lot of work around assessments. There's suggestions for at the school and policy levels for supporting students in secondary school settings in both remote and hybrid learning and in-person learning. And then there's also modules for teachers that you have access to. The second center, which is at the University of Houston, also has a center website. They also have really good resources. They've been doing a webinar series, and these are really nice because they're like 30-minute clips that you can access so they don't go on forever. But it's just, they look at one small topic each time, and they bring in an expert to kind of discuss, but they also answer sort of questions from the audience. So it's more of a dialogue, and they cover various topics, not just around course taking or barriers of that these students face, but they just look at sort of more relevant topics like the impact of COVID on these students or access to technology and things like that. So I encourage you to check out these resources if that's of interest. Okay, so that's it for my part. And this is where things will get really interesting because I will talk about SBIR, which I do not oversee. So this will be good. So I apologize in advance for probably reading right off the slides. But this program is actually at the level of the U.S. Department of Ed, but it's housed at IES and under NCER. And I mentioned before, my colleague, Dr. Ed Metz, and I'll share his information at the end of the slide, oversees this program. And it provides $1.25 million to developers to create new ed tech products for students, educators, administrators, both in general ed and special education. And there's actually two sort of phases of the work that's happening. So you kind of come in through phase one, and this is a very short period. As you notice, it's 8 months versus like a 4 or 5 year grant. So this is where the developers are proposing to develop a prototype. They sort of lay out the ground, kind of provide general ideas of how these prototypes are going to be created, what the new education technology is, and really how they're going to significantly change the education landscape through their work. Once that's developed, they come in for phase two, which is $1 million investment for the full-scale development. So the first phase is sort of a trial. It seems good. The second phase comes in, you're coming in for a full-scale development and the evaluation of this new product. So this focuses both on the R&D part, so the research base, and also on the private sector commercialization. And there's a pretty heavy emphasis on the commercialization, the scalability, the generalizability of this work. And there's millions of students actually, and educators and administrators who are benefiting from the projects that have come out of this SBIR program each year during COVID. So 2020 to 2021, the SBIR EdTech programs and products were used for remote learning by more than 1 million students. And you can actually find out more about this on the SBIR project sites. There's these success stories that you can, that provide about a 1 or 2 pager around this, as well as you have the websites there that you can actually look at the products. So recently, and so SBIR supports all types of products, but recently there's actually been quite a few awards that have been made that focus specifically on English learners. And I will provide you with 3 examples. So the first one, and all of these examples are actually examples of personalized adaptive learning through AI technology. And this has been really helpful, especially, during remote learning, and to have sort of that personalized learning that's happening. So this one is called Story World. It's been developed from, it came in 2017, and it targets children grades K through 2. And there's a short 90-second clip that I'll show you so you get a better idea of what this looks like.
Hi, I'm Sahana. I'm a 7th grader in Jersey City, and I'm really proud to introduce Story World.
Story World uses the magic of stories, combining reading, writing, listening, and speaking to put language into context and students on a path to language proficiency. Let's start with one of our stories. Listen to the text read aloud by a native speaker. My clothes don't fit. And switch languages at any time. Every word is clickable. Click it once to hear the word aloud in the target language, clothes, and click again to hear and read it in the home language, ropa. All stories include interactive quizzes that reinforce vocabulary, listening, and reading comprehension. Students can also record oral and written responses, like retelling the stories, promoting 21st century thinking skills with questions that go beyond the text. All student activity is recorded in our dashboard. Pull up the numbers for the entire class and identify students who are excelling or potentially falling behind. Every story comes with worksheets that can be used online or printable. Storyworld can be used for independent learning at school or at home and as a class activity. It takes only minutes to get going and let the learning begin.
I do my best.
I do my best. Hi, my name's Elise, and I get to
Kings Peak Technology, and this was recently awarded, and it's still ongoing. And this supports English learners in grades 6 through 12 in reading passages. They're employing a machine learning engine that sort of flips and adjusts words from one language to another based on what the readers know. And as they gain skills, they take that into account with that machine learning technology in order to sort of help scaffold that learning. So here's another clip really quickly that can explain it better than I can.
An instructional aide from Scottsboro, Alabama. I'm pleased to introduce the video trailer for the Loom View language learning product by Kings Peak Technology.
LoomView is a Chrome browser extension that helps middle and high school English learners improve their academic vocabulary and understand difficult English texts. It does this by flipping words from one language into another, creating what linguists call a diglot weave reader. The vocabulary learning mode helps students learn new target language words as they read online articles or even their social media feed in their native language, such as Spanish. The aided reading mode helps students better understand articles in their target language, such as English. For example, notice that many of the most difficult words on this English science article are flipped back into the reader's native Spanish language. In both modes, students can mouse over a word to see a tooltip that displays the corresponding translation of the word, hear the word spoken, and favorite the word to study later. On the Student LoomView portal, students can see a list of words they have favorited and word packs that teachers have assigned them. They can study words using flashcards, as well as practice them using a variety of quiz questions. The dashboard shows summary statistics and graphs highlighting time spent reading and studying using the quizzes.
And the final example is called Pikto Word by Kuaps. And again, this is an ongoing project, but in this, students are presented with a picture-based puzzle to help them learn vocabulary words. Again, machine learning technology is used to personalize the game, and it adjusts to the level of the student. So, they can, if they get so many wrong, you get an easier puzzle. If they get so many right, they get a more challenging puzzle, all with the goal of helping them scaffold and learn. So this is the final video that I'll share with you on Pikto Word.
English language learner teacher from Iowa City, Iowa. I'm pleased to introduce the video trailer for Pikto Word School, an app that supports English language instruction for elementary school students.
Pikto Word School provides a unique English learning experience through a student app personalized by machine learning and an interactive dashboard for teachers. The student app offers two learning modes, classroom mode and playground mode. Classroom mode is designed for teacher-led group instruction where students solve puzzles collaboratively. Classroom mode also contains a final review exercise that tests students' knowledge of the words they've learned during that session. Content is grouped into lesson plans relevant to a grade 3 language arts curriculum. Playground mode, on the other hand, is a free play mode that allows students to solve puzzles individually during free time. Our algorithm collects and analyzes student activity in the app to predict a student's engagement level and identify when they may be struggling. If our algorithm detects that a user is struggling or disengaged, we serve them an easier puzzle to boost their confidence and re-engage them in the app. Once the user is re-engaged, we provide users with content that either reinforces areas of struggle or introduces new vocabulary and spelling patterns. We hope you enjoyed this overview of Pikto Word School and share our excitement about the future of the platform. Thank you.
Buenos días, soy la
Include the websites to these individual EdTech interventions that you can access, as well as contact information. Okay. So every year there's the Games Expo, and I'll put a plug in it for this year. And it's an annual public event to showcase more than 100 EdTech learning games and technologies that have been developed through Sbir. It will likely occur in 2023. However, we don't know what's going to happen. Typically, it's held in person, and they have all the EdTech games out. Students come, they get to interact and play with them. They get to meet the developers and ask questions. So it's a really exciting sort of event. This past year, it was a virtual event, but even so, they made these technology available for the entire month of the event, where you could access, teachers could use it, try it out, students could use it. And so it's a really great way to sort of see what's up and coming and the different types of technology products that are available that are actually ready to use now. So that's all I have. Here's my contact information. Here's Ed's contact information. If you would like to reach out to us with any questions or comments that you might have, we really encourage you to explore the website and some of the projects that are going on. We're working really hard at IES to really broaden the participation and broaden our reach of new applicants, new researchers, new research topics and questions that are coming. We really, as I mentioned, when I was talking about the different characteristics of the portfolio, there are gaps in the portfolio. So we really encourage you to provide us with any feedback that you might have, or any areas that you feel are places that we can strengthen. So thank you again for your attention, and I'm happy to answer questions. Sure.
Anyone would have any questions, I can bring the mic to you if you have any questions for her, or you can come to the mic. Either way.
Do you know when the next RFAs are going to be released for IES funding? Because typically you submit around, they've been being pushed back in the summers. Yeah.
Yeah, typically they come out late spring for a late summer deadline. We have a funding opportunities page that we do keep updated. So I encourage you to look at that. It's on the IES NCER page with funding opportunities. That page also has helpful videos as well as tip sheets for how to put an application together. But also I encourage you, as I mentioned before, this is pretty unique to what IES does compared to other federal funding agencies. But because our peer review process is completely separate from the different centers, you have full access to the program officers in ways that I think you typically don't get to in other places. So we are able to read full proposals. We are able to talk to you regularly about your ideas and things like that. So I encourage you to reach out.
Hello, and just a quick note to that. So OLS staff here, and just letting everyone know, we will also be posting a link when those do come out through our Nexus newsletter. So just a little plug to make sure you subscribe to that so you are getting those latest updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, for over here. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple quick questions. So number one, I know Dr. Schneider, the director, has talked about maybe restructuring IES, and so what might be the implications for ELL? And I'm also wondering, since special ed has its own kind of center, Is there any potential for having a specifically focused ELL center, given the importance of this area? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So in terms of a focus on English learners, I think many of you are aware of the Secretary's priorities that have come out, and there's a huge focus on the English learner population there. And we've been meeting regularly to better understand the goals of these learning priorities. And so I imagine there's going to be a focus. As I said, we've been working on, before these priorities came out, been working on expanding on the participation starting in, I think, FY 2020 RFA. You'll notice in the RFA, there was a special sort of emphasis on the English learner population. They're actually named in the RFA as one of the groups that we really want to support the research on. And because of that, we have been seeing a lot more kind of come through. So there's that. I don't know if there's going to be an English learner center, but we are working with the White House initiatives pretty regularly. We do have sort of these like learning series and thinking about their priorities and how it relates to our goals as well. So thank you for your question.
I'm interested in two elements that you could talk to. One, if you could talk about the reality of the number of times people have to apply to get IES funding. There are many of us who are committed to this type of research, and there's a challenge for us because it seems, but you can correct me, that there's a privileging of randomized controlled trials, which many of us find is slightly unethical, maybe more unethical. And so they sometimes, if there's a way to work around someone who is randomly assigned as a control, that they get the PD later so that we can overcome that bias in the studies. So I think we all need to hear the truth about how hard it is to get IES funding. I know I've tried and applied twice, and the role of that feedback and how many times should we try before we just say, you aren't for us. But I mean that in like, help us to know how to get this targeted funding, because we're very interested in advancing EL issues. I'm thinking one of the classic studies that in my work I would rely on is Saunders and Goldenberg's randomized controlled trial, which was merely 3-4 months. And many of us do longitudinal work. So if you could help us come over like how we can think about the benefit of doing something artificial with schools. It's not how schools work. And that randomized control element is extremely difficult to recruit anyone to participate with us. But again, not meant as a critique of you, but a reality of those of us who work with schools, trying to respect how schools actually function.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it's a really important one. And I agree with you. You know, before coming to IES, I was also a special education teacher, and I also worked in different countries to help, you know, in the classrooms. So I agree with you. We don't want to sort of test in almost like a lab-like environment, right? So I'll answer your first question, which it's really hard to say. I wish I actually had a chart that shows like how many times somebody has applied. So I will say, typically, I think we don't see a lot of applicants get funded their first time. And I think that's because there are some really specific things that IES proposals have to include. But I think, you know, a lot more get funded their second and third time around. But I think beyond that, I would again encourage you to work with your program officers. it is not an easy sort of proposal to put together. There are very specific things that they do look for, but program officers do have insights. You know, we sit in on panel meetings, we hear reviewers, we do get to participate, and over time we have collected some tips that I think would be really helpful. And again, you know, it's I think to your benefit, because you know, having feedback from somebody that's not in your, you know, research team or anything like that is also, I think, pretty useful. And you can use program officers as a resource for that too. So we do have numbers, and I would actually encourage you to reach out to our commissioner who has slides. And I think we just recently had a PI meeting, and there is a YouTube sort of playlist of all the presentations from there. And one of the talks do talk about the number of times that people have had to sort of resubmit. So that's there. In terms of RCTs, I know there's a sort of this perception that IES only funds RCTs, but and we do fund RCTs, but that's actually not the majority of our work. And if you remember the slide with the project types, the reason that I mentioned those 4 project types in the R&D centers is 3 of those project types actually don't focus on RCTs at all. So it just, I think there's some sort of heavy emphasis on RCTs, and maybe that has to do with the other centers as well that do look at, you know, like the What Works Clearinghouse that do focus on these experiments. But many of the work that we fund are actually development work. They have qualitative components to it. They have focus groups. I would say all of those projects actually probably include interviews and focus groups and these qualitative analyses that have to that are really important for the development work. The exploration work, those don't include any RCTs. Those are looking at associations and things like that. So again, I would you know, encourage you to look at already funded work. We do have a website that lists all the awards that have been funded and their project abstracts, and you can take a look at the kinds of methods that they're using and the kinds of questions that are being asked.
All right, any other questions for Dr. Kim? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I just have a couple of housekeeping items. So I'm Jen Himmel. I'm the project director for the National Clearinghouse of English Language Acquisition. We're so happy to see so many familiar faces as well as some new ones. If you haven't checked out the Insala booth, it's right out there. Please do so. We have multicolored infographics, fact sheets. We have lots of good OELA goodies, free stuff to give away. So please head on over there. I have an important announcement about lunch. So if you just bear with me for a moment, you will notice they are grab and go. And so that will facilitate you eating anywhere you like. You feel free to stay here in the ballroom, but if you want to get up, move around, go around the hotel, go back to your room, all up to you. So please do what you are comfortable with. A couple of other things about the lunch. So if you ordered a meal, you will have a card behind your badge. So it will look like